Welcome to the third lecture in Module 6, and in this lecture we'll dig more into HTML and talk about the HTML document structure. Now here's a typical HTML document. You'll see here the very first tag called, it's not actually an HTML tag, but this is doc type HTML. That's used for HTML5. There's a HTML open tag, head, body, and then the close HTML tag. Let's talk about each of these sections of the document in more detail now. So this doc type declaration, as I've already said, it must be the first thing that appears, but it's not an actual HTML element. And notice there's no end tag associated with that as well. For HTML5, this is all you need. If you look at some older versions, if you look at some web pages, some older versions, you'll see something like this doc type HTML public and this data description language. That's for HTML4 and previous versions of HTML4. You'll see this is very simple though for HTML5. It's just doc type HTML. Now, the HTML tag itself then, which was below the doc type tag, the HTML tag is an HTML tag, and it's the outermost element associated with every document. So it's the root of the document, in other words. And the children are the head and body, and then there can be children inside of the head and children inside of the body, as we've already discussed. So again, we talked about the fact that HTML documents have a tree structure. The root of every HTML document is the HTML tag. Now, here are the children, as I've already said, and here are the children of those children. So this is how you can visualize this as a tree. Now the head element is the container for all of the things that should go in the head of the document. And what are those things? A title element is required. So every HTML document needs to have a title. And then the other one you'll see a lot of here is this link element. This is how you read in the cascading style sheets, as well as the JavaScript elements using this link tag. Now notice that there's no end tag associated with the link. This is an HTML element that doesn't have an end tag. And you'll see the attributes there. This rel stands for relationship, that the relationship of the link is a style sheet, and this href is where that style sheet is located. And if you use something like I use here where I just put theme.css, it's going to look on the web server that provided the page, it's going to look there for this thing, under the public section of that web page. But in many cases, you'll see an entire URL specified here. So it's going someplace else to some other website to grab that style sheet. Let me see, the URL itself could be absolute, and that's what I just mentioned, if it's pointing to another website, or it could be relative. So the one I'm showing you here is relative, so that's another way of thinking about what I just said. The href could be absolute, pointing to some other website, specifically where it's at, or relative to the given website. So another common element that you find in the head is script. And this script allows you to specify JavaScript right in the head of the document. And it looks like this. So here's a function that if you type in the body of the document message, it'll actually print hello world to that document. And you can try this. Create an HTML document, put this script in the header, and in the body, just type message, and it'll, in the web page, if you then click on that HTML file, it'll open it in a browser, and it'll say hello world. So this is something that's very easy to try. Give it a try. Now, if the source is present, and this is the more common way, and I think the more accepted way for doing this, is try not to define these behaviors in the document itself, but put it in a separate file. So if this source attribute is available here, then it's saying the source is myscripts.js. Again, it could be either absolute or relative location, but this is saying that there's a script and you can find it here. There's the source. So that's a more common way, more accepted way of putting behavior, attaching behavior to a document by specifying it in the head of the document. Now another common head element, we talked about this, is this meta tag. This meta tag is used to provide meta information. And what is meta information? It's information about information. That's what meta means. So if you want to provide information about an HTML document, here's where you do it. And this is machine parsable, that should say parsable, and it will not be displayed in the web page. This is just information that other machines can use to read this web page. Some examples, it may specify when you should, how often this web page should be refreshed. So if you've got a web page that's constantly providing new information, you may want to say that the web page has to be updated every few minutes. And you can also specify keywords as a part of your metadata. And these keywords can be used so that other websites like Google or others, can figure out what's in your web page by looking at those keywords. So here's an example. And by the way, this first one I'm showing here, this character set, it's a very common one to specify. This is a Unicode character set, 8-bit. It's a variable length encoding scheme that's very popular to use nowadays. Now, Unicode allows you to specify other characters other than English, and so that's why it's very popular to use. The description of the website I'm showing here, the keywords, as well as the author. These are very common things that you can put as meta information into the head section of a document. Now, the body, this is the actual document structure. Inside the body is where you put these tags like divisions and paragraphs and headings. So the actual content that's rendered, that's in the body. So every body element is either a block level or a text level element. And sometimes folks refer to the text level elements as inline. Now, block level elements, they specify the major structure of a web page. So the headings, the paragraphs, the divisions, these are block level. But then inline elements might be that a piece of text is emphasized or bold or something like that. So those are the inline elements. Now, block elements always produce a new line in the rendering, while an inline element does not produce a new line in the rendering of that document. Let's take a look at specific elements that appear inside the body of actual web pages. Now, I'm going to show you some of these, and then what I'd like you to do is also go to the W3 Schools to see all of the types of body elements that are available to you. Let's take a look at the tags that are listed at the W3 Schools site. Go to w3schools.com/tags, and we'll see here a list of all of the tags that are available, not only in the body, but also the head as well. Now, let me point out a few that you'll use quite a bit. This A is for creating a hyperlink. You'll see this quite a bit. B, this is one of the inline elements I discussed for creating bold text. The div is very common for defining a section of a document. You'll see this used quite often. You'll see footer, figure, headers, H1 to H6 headers are very common. HR for horizontal rule, and a few more. So take a look at this site and explore some of the tags that are available to you. Another one that you'll see quite a bit and should become familiar with is the notion of how to create tables, so how you can define a table. If we inspect the HTML on this page, so open up your developer tools, and let's take a look at the HTML on this page. Here we've got the HTML tag I talked about. You see doc type here, and then head and body. And let's inspect the body elements, right? You'll see there's a whole bunch of divs here. And you'll notice in this is Chrome browser. As I hover over one, it covers in blue the section of the document that this responds to. So this is this div, right? Remember, that's for a division of the document, and we'll see what this ID means shortly. If I open it up, it's got a bunch of other divs inside of it. So let's open up this page div, and we'll see that it has additional divs inside of it and so on. And so this main div has a lot of the information. So for example, the H1 header, that's at the top of the page here. This H1 header, you'll see it'll get highlighted. It's if I open it up, you'll see it's this HTML reference. There's another H2 level heading called ordered alphabetically, and you see that here, and so on. So take a look at this. P defines a paragraph. B, here's a break, a line break. Here's a table as we discussed it. If you want to open it up, you can see how tables are actually created with a table body, and then table rows, table headings, and so on and so forth. So take a look at, open up any web page and inspect it in this way, and you can actually see the precise tags that are being used.
So it's a very useful way for understanding how a web page is constructed by exploring it through this developer's view.
This completes the third lecture in Module 6.